Hello and welcome to Enrich in China's webinar for today about funding opportunities in China. Our webinar will focus on a case study, how to access government funding in Shanghai. My name is Eli Stepanovic. I am a project manager at the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG. And I will come to the agenda. Just a second. So I will start my short insight into the Enrich in China developments. So what I want to say, I'm sorry. Organizers could do it. Maybe we could just turn to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So I would like to draw your attention to Enrich in China's open call for external service providers, for soft landing zones, and for members. Until this week, the call is open to apply for external service providers if you are an organization providing services for Sino-European STI cooperation, and you can contact us and explain your services that you provide, and we might enter into a collaboration. The same is true for soft landing zones. So if you provide business support in China, either you're European or a Chinese organization, supporting soft landing, providing services for entering the Chinese market, such as localization guidance, if you provide co-working space or administrative and secretariat support. So please contact us or find more information at the link. So you can become an Enrich in China soft landing zone if we enter into a collaboration. And of course, we would very much like to welcome you to become member of the Enrich in China network. So you have access to the Enrich in China contacts and can receive discounts on our events, seminars, and workshops. Contact us or have a look at the homepage about the membership fees. Currently, we have 4 soft landing zones covering the areas of Beijing, Zhang, Shanghai, and Xi'an. These 4 soft landing zones, which are accredited by Enrich in China, so they act as Enrich in China soft landing zones. They provide co-working space, administrative support, secretariat support, advice on laws and regulations. They also give introduction to the local scientific and business community and provide access to markets, knowledge, finance, and partners. So if you want to take advantage of the services of these 4 soft landing zones, you can also contact us as well. But if you think that you are an organization which can provide as well these services in China, please apply for it. So this week the call closes. I'm now coming to the activities which are fixed and planned for the next year. So as you see, as I mentioned, until November 22nd, the call for applications is open. Either you can provide services as a soft landing zone or an external service provider, or if you want to become member within the ENRICH in China network. In April next year, an innovation tour is planned. So more information will be given in the next couple of weeks. And fixed is also our annual funding forum for 2020 on October 6th to 7th. But we will hear more about this from my colleague. And now I would like to introduce Jessie Zhang to you. She will be the first speaker for today. Dr. Jessie Zhang was born and grew up in China. She has been living in Germany and Switzerland for 18 years. She holds a PhD in chemistry and has worked in the chemical industry for several years. Since 2014, she has been working at EUrelations in Switzerland in the area of Sino-European Science, Technology and Innovation Cooperation. She's very well experienced as communication partner between industry and research and between Europe and China. She was the organizer of the ENRICH Annual Funding Forum this year and will give us some insights about the outcomes, the learnings, and also the outlook for next year's Annual Funding Forum. Jessie, please.
Thank you, Ellie. So welcome everyone to today's webinar. I would like to show you some outcome and feedbacks from our annual funding forum this year. It took place in Brussels. So please next. Yeah, so it was a one-day event this year. So we were really immersed in EU-China collaboration in both in academia and business. And the key of the whole collaboration is funding. So there are some figures, and this year we had 15 experts sharing excellent keynotes and also experience. We had 55 participants, and they represent organizations from more than 10 countries. And here you can see some impressions from our event. We had in the mornings, we had a plenary session hearing more from the big picture on the Europe-China collaboration. And then we had breakout session in academia and business, and we had first-hand experience from different experts who are already working in this area. So I just show you some of our experts. We had from the academia side, we had Isabel from as the head of international affairs from Research Foundation Flanders. From Belgium, we had Barry from the Netherlands, also from more academia side, and we have David, a very experienced professor based in Beijing and UK, and we had Professor also George. He is also very experienced professor in collaboration with China, and we had Michelle coming from China all the way to share her experience in working in international projects. And we had Mr. Xia from the Beijing Belt and Road in International Co-Incubation. So he was providing insight into what are the possibilities for European companies to be involved in Belt and Road initiatives. And Alessio was sharing very great insight of the local, regional, local government fundings in China, and but about this we will hear more later from our case study. And so Daniel was from Convergence Partner, which is an investment company investing into deep tech deep tech companies here in Europe to be scaled up in China. So very, very interesting. And Peter is the head of EU SME Center. He shared his knowledge in e-commerce and digital marketing, and Valentin as an IP expert working many years also in China, sharing his view on the IP protection. So we had, I would like to show you quickly what are the outcomes from the academia session. We heard that the science, technology, and the innovation collaboration needs to focus on excellence in science based on trust. So trust is very important in China. And bilateral national programs with China should be aligned and bundled to become multilateral European joint programs, such as the Joint Programming Initiative Urban Europe provides. An open communication and a series of trust-building visits to China reassure successful, sustainable collaboration with Chinese counterparts. So we hear the word trust again. And the European researchers based in China are potential helpful contacts able to open doors to Sino-European STI collaboration. And do not underestimate the social fact. Everything can be solved with your partners by eating. And this is a quote from Barry, and as a Chinese, I can confirm his opinion. And and on the business session, we heard the public funding opportunities in China do exist for European tech SMEs based in China. It is recommended that the companies should start with local level funding opportunities before going to the national level. And the venture capital investment companies such as Convergence Partners are looking for deep tech SMEs in Europe to be scaled up in China. The potential of Chinese market is enormous. Many successful cases have been done through them. And IP protection in China is possible. The regulatory framework is improving. Build a smart IP strategy from the beginning on. So overall, the expert advised European companies should do their homework before going to China and be committed if they decide to enter China. So here, and just short feedbacks from our participants, and the majority did assess our event as excellent and very good, and also over 90% would recommend our event again. And what they really appreciated were the topics and the breakout sessions, and all the experience and the relevant topics, and also the networking. So we would like to continue this good work, and we are already in the planning of next year's funding forum, and we are going to Budapest with our local host, China Chem Hungary, and this will be a 2-day event. So here you can see we have again the topics in the inner circle is the focus topics. It is about funding. So we are going to involve funding agencies and companies from both sides, from Chinese side and from European side, and from the joint funding organizations. And then from the outer circle, you can see these are the topics which are also related and very important, and they will be most of them shared in master classes. So we will be again addressing both academia side and business side, such as commercialization of R&D result, fundraising for science, and on the business side, how to present your company in front of investors, and so on. So this will be a 2-day event. The first day will include again the forum and the exhibition. The exhibition will be mainly for the funding agencies or third or service provider companies, and the second day will be master classes. So save the date, and you will hear more from us, and hopefully to see you in Budapest next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jessie. If you have questions to Jessie's presentation or for the presentation which is coming now, please use the questions area of the system. Write down the questions and we will get back to them in the questions and answers session of today later. So I would like to introduce now Dr. Li Wang. He has received his PhD in biomedical engineering from the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis. He has over 27 years experience in the cardiac rhythm management industry, including research and development, global marketing, and business management. As the first CEO of MicroPortSorin organization from 2014 to 2019, he led the team and built MicroPortSorin into a full function company responsible for research and development, establishing manufacturing lines, as well as clinical, regulatory, and commercial operations. I hope he will tell us a little bit more and join share his experiences. And if you have questions, as I said, please use the questions areas. So Dr. Li Wang, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you might be. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm very happy to share with you some of our experiences in obtaining government funding in Shanghai. Due to some technical issues, I would have to ask the organizer to advance the slide for me, and also there may be a little bit delay on my side in terms of seeing the slide advancement, so maybe there will be some delay, so I apologize for that at the start. Second, I would like to say is that what I'm going to be sharing with you, the funding opportunities in China are multiple levels. As you heard earlier, there's national level, there's provincial level, and the city level funding opportunities. So what I like to focus is more on the city of Shanghai. The other thing is that I'm going to be sharing with you the experiences I've had in the last 5 years leading the MicroPortSorinCRM company in Shanghai. So I can only share with you what I have seen, what I've experienced, what I have heard from others. So it would not be the completeness of the entire funding opportunities, but I can share with you some of the things we learned over the years and hope that will be helpful to you. Next slide, please. So the content of my presentation will be, I'll give you a little bit background on what the company is, because it has to do also with how you're going to apply for funding, how your company is organized. Funding is only one thing that you do for the company, so you have to do many things to ensure that you will be able to apply for the funding as you advance your company's missions and objectives. And so the company, MicroPortSorinCRM, it's a joint venture between a Chinese local company called MicroPort and a company based in Italy called Sorin Group. Well, the company since had merged with another company in the US. It's now called LivaNova. So Sorin was based in Milan initially, and then now it's based in London. On the other hand, the Sorin's CRM business, which has its headquarters in Paris, is the actual business that had the joint venture with MicroPort. So it's actually a company between a Chinese company, like I said earlier, and then a European company forming this joint venture, with the Chinese company has a bit more with a 51% share versus 49% share as the joint venture. Next slide, please. So I'll give you some information on the company itself and what has embarked on over the last 4 to 5 years, and over which what kind of fundings we were able to obtain during the process. So I'd like to give you a little bit overview of the company. I ran the company. I was the first CEO, and I ran the company for 5 years. I actually left the company a few months ago. So the company now is what I call a full cardio rhythm management company, which is really the implantable cardiac pacemaker business, involving research and development, manufacturing, and commercialization with 150 employees. We have 3 manufacturing lines with a 2 certificate of 13485, and also we have received approval from Chinese CFDA from approval for products made in China. And we have several products enter the clinical pre-market clinical trials, anticipation for more clinical, market approvals. Last year we had a revenue of 45 million, which this is in Chinese currency, 45 million, with a very young company with only 4 or 5 years history. We have also received numerous government awards or industry awards, as well as government fundings, which I will share with you in the next slide. Obviously, we have patents and trademarks and so on and so forth. So it's a full-fledged company with multiple aspects of operations in terms of R&D, manufacturing, and commercialization, and government affairs, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So based on my experience, the funding, the government funding opportunities, you can see it in 2 different categories. One is what you have done. In this case, on this, what this slide shows is what's called either certification or designation for the companies that are located in Shanghai. The next slide I will share with you is more related to what you will be doing. So it's more project-based. So this designation is more company-based. The next slide is more project-based. So for the sort of designation of the companies, there are quite a few different categories. Over the years, we have received 2 of those designations. Typically, these things are based on, like I mentioned, focused on company as a whole, what you have accomplished over however long the history you have in terms of the company established locally. And it looks at the revenue, more importantly, revenue from what you manufactured locally. You may be a company that has imported products as well as manufacturing products locally. So the government folk are more interested in supporting companies that have hopefully more revenue based on the products made locally versus products that have been imported. And also they are interested in looking at your R&D funding, the level of R&Ds, as well as your intellectual properties like patents, things of that nature. And there's some other prerequisite for funding support. One example is, which this is very important, I hope you can see from my slide, which may be a bit small, it's called High or New Technology Enterprise. This is a designation which is prerequisite for companies to apply for many fundings, either as a company or project-based, either nationally or locally. So this is a very important designation for any companies to have, and which not only in Shanghai, but also in other regions as well, I believe. What it means is that, number one, your company is working on high-tech area. The government has listing of categories you can search for. The second is that your revenue, I think it's 60% of the revenue has to be from products that are manufactured in your facility in Shanghai. Like I mentioned earlier, for those companies may also have imported products that you're selling in China. So which means you may ask, what if we are a new product company that are still focusing on R&D, which means we don't have much revenue, at least not revenue from locally manufactured products. What would happen? So which actually is the case for us. We, as I mentioned earlier, we are a joint venture enterprise. We do have some imported products we're selling, but also we're focusing on manufactured products and R&D products in China. So because of that, initially we were not able to apply for this particular designation and therefore funding that comes along with it. And we talked to the government, and then eventually they have changed policy. A company like ours, before we were able to receive approval for our products to be marketed in China that are manufactured locally, we can be put into what they call the incubator, and which allow us to apply for the similar designation, which will benefit us in terms of fundings and designations and things of that nature. So something to be look out for. The other thing I would say too is the government now are much more willing to listen to the companies and revise the policy as long as what you're suggesting are making sense. So that's one. The second we actually received also from the government is called so R&D centers from foreign enterprises. Because we are a joint venture with fundings or investment from foreign companies, we are eligible for this for such a designation. We apply for and we qualified for such a R&D center, and we have received the funding for it, which is really beneficial. So if you look at the funding agencies from Shanghai government, I've listed 3 key areas, and I hope you can see from the slides. One is called Shanghai Municipal Commission of Science and Technology. Obviously, this is science and technology related government agency. The second agency is Shanghai Municipal Commission of Economy and Information. This is more related to enterprises that are in more manufacturing, more capital investment stage of the company versus the science and technology is more focused on early phase R&D or mid phase R&D. And the third one is the Shanghai Municipal Commission of Commerce. They are more for those companies that have patents or they have product approved in China, and as you market release your product, they may provide you some support. So these are different designations that you can get from different agencies from the Shanghai government. The other one I didn't mention is what they call the little giant technology company that are really focused on R&D, spending quite a bit of money in R&D. The science technology would have some funding for you as well. So these are the examples I want to give you in terms of, like I said earlier, is a company-based funding is more based on what you have accomplished, what you are doing today. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, which what I will share with you more related to the fundings on the projects you plan to work on. So this is this line is sort of, I put this line together, this sort of stages together to demonstrate where you are. No, I'm in the medical device industry, high-tech implantable high-risk medical device industry. You can see that you have early feasibility studies, and you have, if you have done your prototype, and then if you're doing your verification of your product, and then you enter the clinical study phase of product development, and then you are in the manufacturing line upgrade or applying for approval, and then you have post-market commercialization and market surveillance, different stages. So I will share with you what we have done as a company again, project-based, what fundings we applied for that are very beneficial to us. So I'll give you a couple examples. One is in Shanghai, as well as in China, there's an annual, what they call innovation competition. There's one in Shanghai in municipal level, and there's one in the national level. The one, typically companies will enter the city level, and if you pass certain level, then you will be going up on to the national level. So as a company, we participated in since 2006. Every year of those competitions, we actually won the second place of national award, and since we also have won multiple awards, which will provide funding for that. The government will give you funding for that, as well as since you have won the award, it helps when you apply for other agencies' funding, since they are interconnected in terms of those competitions. The other three examples I'll share with you is, these are the red ones are from Shanghai Science and Technology Commissions. So one example I'll give you is more from focusing on the early stage of product development. It's called prototyping. Once you have done your prototypes in a medical device, in China, you have to do something called type testing. So if you're in that stage, there's certain funding you can apply for based on certain products. So for our company, we actually have applied twice. Both we received the funding on 2 different products during the product development process, which was very helpful. Since these are the things, since we're spending the money to develop those products already, and then when you put the funding application in, the certain portion of the total funding will be coming from the government as a grant to you. The next example I will share with you also is more on the later stage, more receiving clinical, as you enter the clinical trial stage. So it's more after you have received the type testing report, after you have done the animal studies, which is a prerequisite of entering a human clinical trial. So as you plan for your clinical trial and you have a plan together, you have the funding, the funding level that's required, you can apply for funding from Science and Technology Commission of the Shanghai government, and which we successfully did in 2018. So that's second type of funding based on the upcoming projects you have planned already. The third one is more based on upgrades or establishing high-tech manufacturing lines. So we had one manufacturing line, and we were planning to upgrade the line to allow more products to be manufactured in the line. So we have to really change it, buy more equipment, and do a lot of testing to ensure the line is good, the upgrade is good. So we applied for another funding from the Shanghai Municipal Commission of Economy and Information. Again, in 2018, we were again successfully received the funding. But again, like I said earlier, these are the type of funding that, based on the projects the company is already planning on doing. And as you look for what kind of funding the government is planning on providing, and if you find some matching funding opportunities, you can submit the application, and typically they go through a committee which they would review for you, and then if they approve it, then you'll get the funding. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I want to share some perspectives we have gathered over the years after we have done this for quite a few years in Shanghai. One is, receiving government funding cannot be an insulated activity. It would have to be part of your overall strategy to win in China It would have to be part of what you plan to do already. And you also need to have people, employees, designated for this work to be successful. When I say designated, doesn't mean that somebody has to be full-time. It has to have somebody who have regularly in contact with government agencies, go on their website, understand what the trend is, what the requirement is, and to make sure when you plan internally, the way you're planning it would have to fit what the government is requesting in terms of what type of products, which stage you're more interested in, and so on and so forth. And also, this person would have to understand government fundings as well as government policies, both on the national initiatives in terms of innovation, technology advancement, but also on the local government level, like I mentioned earlier. The other thing is the funding level typically is based on the percentage of your own investment in terms of R&D spending in software, let's say software or human resources, as well as capital spending. Typically, they put less percent. Let's say the project's $100,000. Let's say your human resources is $50,000 of the $100,000. Typically, the government put less percentage that's allowed to apply for funding, let's say 10 to 20%, because they are more interested in supporting capital spending, because the capital spending is something they can feel and touch. They know what you have purchased. The human resource spending is much harder to gauge or to verify. On the other hand, over time, we have communicated with the government saying many of the high-tech companies, they do the manufacturing line once, but the product innovation really comes from engineers in terms of software revisions or small hardware changes and so on and so forth. So they are changing their perspectives. But nevertheless, the overfunding they will provide you will be potentially, typically less than 50% that you're already planning on spending based on the need of the project. So the overall percent depending on the size of the project, the level of funding that's available, and so on and so forth. The other thing you may ask, who would be eligible for fundings, like say in cities like Shanghai? What I can tell you is everybody can apply. If you are WOFE, which means wholly owned foreign enterprises, or like our case, a joint venture, or a totally local company, all can apply. They don't just discriminate one versus the other. The other thing is for ones that are having foreign investment, they have more specific funding opportunities for you. The example that I gave you, the joint venture that we were able to apply for, like foreign R&D centers that our local companies may or may not be able to enjoy. So the key benefits perspective, obviously, it's either from funding or they provide you tax reimbursement or reduction. They also will give you, not only for the company, but also potentially for the employees, personal incomes may be reduced. So it will be really beneficial for company to attract high talent individuals, so on and so forth. So in the interest of time, I will not go into the very much details in that regard. From an application perspective, everything will be available online. You can submit it online typically. Used to be you can submit on paper. I think more and more so that you can submit online. They typically, like I mentioned earlier, there will be expert committee that review and provide recommendation for the final decision. And for those of you who may not have any experience with applying, and if you're applying for the first time, there are third-party service providers can help you and support you to help you write the application for the funding. And also, if you apply for patents in China or internationally, there are also funding available to provide you funding for patents as well. Next slide, please. Yes, so what I was saying earlier, if applying for funding cannot be an isolated activity. It has to be overall what you do as a company. What we have done is we have done many different things relate to media reports, having winning awards and receive funding and branding. That all of those come to help you for one or the other. So we have received awards for most investment-worthy healthcare enterprises, won the awards, and our products have been listed in the innovative medical device product category by the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology, and so on and so forth, which all helped us become known to the government agencies. They know what we can do. They are more convinced, or they are more open to help companies like that. So next slide, please. So in quick summary, so government funding programs covering various stages of the company are available for WFOE, JV, or local companies. And to receive such funding successfully, it does require understanding of the policies and careful planning, and also dedicated resources. It has to be, like you mentioned earlier, part of the company overall strategies, not isolated activities. And funding is becoming very competitive because there are many JVs and WFOEs and local companies, high-tech companies in various areas, medical or IC or artificial intelligence, which are the three areas that are a focus of the government of Shanghai. So very competitive. You have to have good programs, good people to be successful. So that ends, and that concludes my formal presentation, and I'm happy to entertain a few questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang, for this information and for the important insights and for sharing your experiences. It was very interesting to hear that funding needs to be already from government side needs to be already planned within the business. So I see that from the participants' side there are no questions, but maybe allow me one question from my side. You mentioned that you would recommend third-party service providers to support you if it's the first time for applying for government funding. How easy is it to find good service providers? Is there a list or whom to contact to get access to this information and to the support of service providers?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I wouldn't say I would recommend. What I was trying to convey was that if you are doing this for the first time, if you don't have local staff that have experience, or who know people who have experience, there is third party available for you to get your help. I didn't know initially. I didn't know like who would be the third party. As I participate, or my staff participate in different programs, and we get to know people who actually do this for a living. So I have, at the time, I had a few service providers that are helping us. So in the future, but this is focusing on medical device arena. So for the future, if somebody is interested, I'll be happy to try to connect you with the people that I know. There's no formal organization or website you can go to and say, hey, who are the third party, if there's a list, not that I know of. It's more word of mouth type of connections.
Thank you very much. I do see some questions coming up. Going into the same direction, could you please provide any website of Shanghai government funding programs? And how much do such service providers charge approximately? Can you give us some insights there?
Okay, so on the second question, they charge, if I remember correctly, because some of these staff are mostly handled by my staff in terms of negotiations and so on and so forth. I just finally approved the contract. If I remember correctly, it would be based on a certain percentage of the total funding you will be receiving. If you don't receive, I don't think they charge you. I think it's a few percentage points of the total funding. If a smaller amount of funding, that percentage may be higher than 5%, but if it's a large funding, it becomes smaller percentage. And obviously, it's also negotiable. So number one. Second, the first question was the government agency website. What I would do, because I can't remember on top of my head, what I recommend is if you go on Chinese, the Baidu, which is the Chinese Google, if you type in Shanghai Science and Technology Commission, it will provide you with its website, and then you can go through the website. There will be a site that tells you about the upcoming funding or the funding related. Also the science and technology also has a agency that provides support and help to companies that are seeking for help or seeking funding. I remember I actually presented the slide deck, very similar slide deck in April to a EU SME seminar. They actually also invited a government person that provides a presentation which tells you more about how to get help from the government. So help is certainly available. I just can't tell you on top of my head where exactly, but if you go to Baidu or the Chinese version of the Google, you'll be able to find it. And I'm sure the EU local Shanghai or Beijing local people, they probably will be able to help you with that as well.
Thank you very much. Allow me also to forward to you another question. It says, since it was mentioned by the first speaker that local government support would be coming before national, how important is it to pick the right region for your tech area?
Well, national is a lot more difficult to apply, and then it typically involves much larger projects. So that's first aspect. The second aspect is that you should, number one is typically you'll be apply for funding where your company is registered. For example, our JV is registered in Shanghai, therefore we apply for Shanghai funding. But you probably won't decide where to register your company only based on where there be funding available. There's many factors that you would have to consider as you choose where your company would be based. If you're a JV, you may consider where your partner is located. Also, if you're a high-tech company, you may consider where the talents are from. And obviously, funding availability certainly is one aspect of the consideration. I hope that I answered that question from that perspective.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I mean, there is one very last question, which is a little bit
Sure.
very detailed. It says that it's a German company focused on artificial intelligence, and they plan to register an office in China but haven't done it yet. So is an application for funding in China without any Chinese relation possible, or only after Chinese office has been registered and started?
Well, indeed. Typically, when you apply for it, apply for funding, it's a company that's applying for it. When I say a company, it would have to be China locally registered company which is the process you have to go through to get your operation license and so on and so forth. So you have to establish the company first, and then have, and also it requires that you have certain projects, or you have achieved certain status in terms of size of the operation, number of R&D people you have. Depending on different funding, they have certain requirements. So the first day of the company established, probably it won't be the best time for you to apply. It will be after certain time, then you can apply for it. Obviously, if you have a local partner, you don't have to have a local partner. Like I said, WFI, if you're wholly owned, so it's entirely your foreign company is 100% owning a local company, you can still apply for it. So it doesn't matter if it's WFI or JV or something, that you can all apply for it. But the key is you have to establish company, have certain level of operations before you can actually apply for these fundings, like I mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
But one more thing I would say too is, as I mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence has become very highly regarded area of focus for the Chinese government in terms of funding, and especially Shanghai government has 3 key areas they are supporting. Doesn't mean they don't support others, but these are 3 areas. One is life sciences, which including pharmaceutical and medical device. Second is integrated circuits, ICs. The third one is artificial intelligence. So Shanghai would be a good place if you're interested in funding. Artificial intelligence would be a good place for you to do this in Shanghai.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Allow me a last question, which would be short.
Sure.
And thank you very much for all your answers in
No
advance. What is the average period to obtain government funding, and is there a period where you can apply, or is it on a continuous basis? How long have you to wait until you apply for government?
Typically, if I remember correctly, typically is on an annual basis, and there is certain opening period during which you can apply for the funding. So you cannot just apply every month or every day. It's certainly, I'm sorry, I won't be able to tell you which months or which couple months that's open, but typically it's annual basis. But there's multiple agencies that are provide funding, so you may be able to have different agencies depending on where you are in terms of your company. One more thing I would add too is, so watch out. So that's why I said you need to have dedicated people who are responsible for watching out for funding opportunities, application deadlines, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, you may miss things like that. The other thing I would say is, if you apply for city level funding, for example, our company, when we received city level funding, we're located in Pudong New District. The district government also potentially will provide either matching funding or a certain percentage of funding to you. So let's say if you get $300,000 or $100,000 of funding from the city government, you also may get maybe $50,000, maybe even up to $100,000 of funding, matching funding from what I call the local government. So watch out for those opportunities as well.
Thank you very, very much. I think it's time now to close also the webinar. If some participants still have questions, please contact us and we will forward them to Dr. Wang if there are some details that need to be checked. Thank you very much to both of our speakers today, and special thanks to Dr. Wang for sharing his experience. Please stay tuned. You can also contact us in our LinkedIn group, or to register for the ENRICH in China e-newsletter. So stay tuned, and the program for next year for the webinars will be online soon. Thank you very much for participating, and thanks again for the 2 speakers for joining and sharing their experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.